When the Roman Republic was born in 509 BCE, it was still just one small city among many in Italy. It had no empire, no vast army, and no great wealth. But it had something far more powerful: discipline, organization, and an unshakable belief that Rome was destined to rule. The first challenge came from its neighbors. Italy at the time wasn't a single nation. It was a patchwork of tribes and city-states: the Etruscans in the north, the Latins around central Italy, and the Samnites and Greeks in the south. Every one of them wanted dominance. And in the middle of this tension sat Rome, hungry and ambitious. Rome's first enemies were close to home. After overthrowing its kings, the new republic faced hostility from the Etruscans, who wanted to restore monarchy. But the Romans resisted fiercely. With the help of their Latin allies, they fought off Etruscan invasions and secured independence. By the 5th century BCE, Rome had not only survived, it had begun to grow. The Latin League, a coalition of nearby cities, had once been Rome's equal. But as Rome gained strength, it started to dominate the League instead of cooperating with it. After the Latin War in 338 BCE, Rome dissolved the League entirely and brought the Latin cities directly under its control. This victory marked a turning point. Rome no longer sought allies, it sought subjects and citizens. Rome's next challenge came from the Samnites, fierce mountain warriors from central Italy. The Samnite Wars were brutal, stretching across decades: 3 separate conflicts between 343 and 290 BCE. The Romans suffered devastating defeats, including one of their most humiliating moments at the Battle of the Caudine Forks, where an entire Roman army was trapped and forced to surrender without a fight. But Rome never forgot and never forgave. They reorganized their legions, studied their mistakes, and returned stronger. The Samnites were eventually crushed, and Rome took control of central Italy. This victory revealed one of the Republic's greatest strengths: resilience. Rome could lose battles, but it never lost wars. By the early 3rd century BCE, only southern Italy remained outside Roman control. Here, powerful Greek colonies thrived, cities like Tarentum, rich and proud, with culture rooted in the great Greek world. When Rome began expanding southward, Tarentum saw it as a threat and declared war. To defend themselves, they called upon a famous Greek general, King Pyrrhus of Epirus. Pyrrhus was one of the most brilliant commanders of his time, a relative of Alexander the Great, trained in Hellenistic warfare. He brought with him war elephants, a terrifying sight the Romans had never seen before. In 280 BCE, he crushed the Romans at Heraclea, and again at Asculum. But his victories came at a terrible cost: thousands of his men died in each battle. When one of his officers congratulated him, Pyrrhus replied, "Another such victory, and we are undone." That's where the phrase Pyrrhic victory comes from: a win so costly, it's almost as bad as defeat. Eventually, Pyrrhus withdrew, and Rome conquered southern Italy. By 265 BCE, the entire Italian peninsula was under Roman control. What had once been a small city-state was now the dominant power of Italy. But as always, success only brought new enemies. Across the sea, on the coast of North Africa, stood the mighty city of Carthage. It was Rome's opposite in almost every way. While Rome built its strength through discipline and land power, Carthage ruled the waves. It was a maritime empire, founded by Phoenician traders centuries earlier. Its merchants controlled trade routes across the Mediterranean, from Spain to Sicily, from Africa to the islands of the West. At first, Rome and Carthage coexisted peacefully. But their ambitions soon collided over Sicily, a rich island that both wanted to control. In 264 BCE, conflict broke out, the First Punic War, the beginning of a rivalry that would last for more than a century. Rome had never been a naval power, but that didn't stop them. They captured a Carthaginian warship, studied its design, and built an entire fleet of their own. Within a few years, they were battling one of the most powerful navies in the world, and winning. To counter Carthage's superior seamanship, the Romans invented the corvus, a boarding device that allowed soldiers to fight sea battles like land battles. This innovation turned the tide. After more than 20 years of war, Carthage was forced to surrender in 241 BCE, giving Rome its first overseas territories, Sicily, Corsica, and Sardinia. It was a massive victory, but the peace wouldn't last long. Carthage rebuilt its power in Spain under a brilliant general named Hamilcar Barca, and his son, Hannibal, would soon become one of the greatest military minds in history. When the Second Punic War began in 218 BCE, Hannibal did the impossible. He led an army of over 50,000 men, and wore elephants, across the Alps, into Italy itself. It was one of the most daring maneuvers ever attempted in ancient warfare. The Romans were stunned. No enemy had ever invaded Italy on such a scale. For more than a decade, Hannibal crushed every Roman army sent against him. At Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and the devastating Battle of Cannae, his tactics left tens of thousands of Roman soldiers dead. It was Rome's darkest hour. Yet even in the face of disaster, the Republic refused to surrender. The Senate simply voted to raise more armies. No peace, no compromise, only victory or death. That stubbornness became Rome's greatest weapon. Under the leadership of Quintus Fabius Maximus, the Romans adopted a new strategy, avoiding direct battles and instead wearing Hannibal down through attrition. Eventually, a young general named Scipio Africanus struck back, taking the war to Carthage itself. In 202 BCE, at the Battle of Zama, Hannibal was finally defeated. Rome had won again, but this time, its victory changed the world. Carthage was forced to surrender its empire, and Rome became the master of the Western Mediterranean. For the first time, Roman soldiers had marched on foreign soil, and they liked it. With each conquest came wealth, land, slaves, and gold. Trade flourished, and the Republic grew rich. But wealth brings corruption. The gap between rich and poor widened, and the values that once made Rome strong, discipline, equality, and civic duty, began to erode. Still, at this stage, the people of Rome saw only triumph. They believed the gods favored them, that they were unstoppable. They had conquered Italy, defeated Carthage, and claimed new territories across the seas. But every empire rises with pride before it learns the cost of power. In the next episode, we'll explore how Rome's victories abroad created chaos at home, how wealth, ambition, and political rivalries slowly began to rot the Republic from within.